Hey guys, so season 2 of Elementary aired last night, of course. I just watched this morning because I was at the library. But anyway, first episode in, and okay, it's called Step 9, which, if you know anything about recovery, Step 9 is making amends to people you have wronged in the past. And, so, in the beginning of the episode, it opens with a man who we didn't find out who he was until like a couple minutes in, because there was this funeral going on. The priest was doing ash dust stuff, and he was about to put the body 6 feet under, and it turned out before they could even get to that part, this man came in drunk. You can tell he's drunk. He had a flask, and he had a grenade, or what looked like a grenade, and was threatening to blow it up. And all these people started running. It's like, don't run, don't run. And I'm trying to expose the man for who he is before he actually leaves the earth or whatever. And turns out it was the Lestrade, who we know there are two different. In the original Holmes stories, there's a Lestrade and there's a Gregson. So the Gregson is, or Gregory, he's the one who's in New York, and then they have the other Lestrade, whose name is Gareth Lestrade, and he's this guy who doesn't look so good right now. And we find out in this episode he has a lot of trouble, which kind of pertains to something that Sherlock feels guilty about. So they go back to New York, well, they flash over to New York, where Sherlock and Watson are in the midst of a case. She texts him, tells him to go meet him in this park where there's like all these pigeons, and it turns out it deals with the carrier pigeon, which I've always found fascinating. I love carrier pigeons. And so that's how they found the person who they were trying to catch. And so if you remember the preview for this episode, you might have seen Watson knock a guy down with I don't know what it was. It was something. It might have been her bag or something. She like hit him in the back of the head and hit him in his face, and then hit him in the back of the head and knocked him down. And the guy was running away and thought he got away from Sherlock, and so it was funny. And then that's when we actually saw Gregson and Detective Bell before that's the only thing they had. They're saying happy hunting or whatever, and they left, and so that case was done. That's when Holmes got a call from the UK. It just says unknown number, United Kingdom, and so he answered it. I didn't know he was going to answer it, and it turned out to be one of his old colleagues from New Scotland Yard, D.I. Hopkins, who was also a former colleague of his, along with D.I. Lestrade at that time. It turns out D.I. Lestrade got into some mess, as we know, because he was about to threaten to blow up someone's body. And what happens is they tell him more about it, and what it is it's this case that Lestrade got suspended for because he had rightfully accused a man of killing his wife, but he couldn't find proof. So the man who died, which was the father of the guy whose name was Lawrence, or was it Lawrence? I think it's Lawrence. Yeah, Lawrence. If I messed up, because their names are similar. I think the dad's name is Warren and the son's name is Lawrence. So Lawrence had been accused of killing his wife, like shooting her in the head, but they could find no evidence of it because the scene had been wiped clean. And Lestrade was really trying to push it and saying, you did it, you did, or whatever. And so they suspended him for that because he kept pushing it, especially because the father kept like messed up Lestrade's career and made him seem like he didn't know what he was doing, especially because Sherlock wasn't there. He had gone into rehab, and he was in the U.S. So 2 weeks prior to this, that's when Lestrade got suspended. And then so Sherlock and Watson go to the UK, to London, to his home, And the first thing they do, they go to New Scotland Yard, and they meet D.I. Hopkins, and D.I. Hopkins brings him up to speed on the case. And so, Holmes, even though he's supposed to be there for one reason, he'll try and do another. Like, he'll try to, like, do two things at once. So he had this, he's looking at it, like, he was trying to ask about the case, and the only reason Hopkins called him was to get Lestrade back into custody, to bring Lestrade to custody, because he had, like, hid away somewhere. And so, while Watson and Holmes were leaving, they go, the son Lawrence ends up coming, saying, because the DI was about to, like, follow Watson and Holmes out, and what happens is he's like, I'm never late for a meeting, especially after a man who's been hounding me or whatever. And so Watson and Holmes, they introduce themselves to her, and the guy Lawrence he's just really mean. Like, he was being all bitchy to Holmes about, because he knew him from his involvement with Lestrade when he was in London working with New Scotland Yard. And so he's like, I have nothing against you, you're a brilliant man, but Lestrade doesn't know is in the wrong, because basically he thinks he's stalking him or whatever. But it turns out Lestrade was in the right, but he didn't have the right evidence, or he couldn't find the evidence that he needed to find. So Holmes had to track down Lestrade. Before that, they went to 221B, which was, as you know, it was Holmes' former residence in London. But it turned out someone is living there. He had paid someone to keep it up and not let anyone live in it. And Holmes was so excited to show Watson his old abode in London, and it's not even his stuff anymore. And I was pretty afraid. I was like, and then when Charlotte goes to check upstairs to see if any of his old stuff is down there, this man walks in and he's like, who are you? Because Watson's still down there. She was looking out the window. And I just laughed because I knew it was Mycroft. It was so crazy, and I laughed so hard. I was like, that's cool. So turns out Mycroft, he's living in 221B, and when Sherlock comes down, he goes, my fatty. He goes, and he's like, and then Mycroft's like, Mycroft? Yeah, Mycroft. And Watson's confused because she doesn't know who this man is, but apparently Sherlock does. So she waits, and then Mycroft's like, he goes, Mycroft Holmes, Sherlock's brother. And Watson turns to Holmes and goes, you have a brother? And it starts this whole thing throughout the episode where Watson doesn't understand why he never told her about Mycroft, and Mycroft wants to know why, also why he hasn't mentioned him at all to Watson, because there's this part where Watson wakes up because a little bit after they decide, as Holmes begrudgingly accepts his brother's offer to let them stay in the guest room in 221B. What was I saying? He lets Watson stay for rest while he goes track down Lestrade because he thinks he has a theory where he can find him. And he ends up finding him at a pub, drinking his life away, as he's already shown to do in the beginning of the episode. And so, and he offers to take him to New Scotland Yard, to the DI, but he doesn't want to go because he doesn't think, because he wants Sherlock to help him uncover the truth because he thinks he's in the right, which he ends up being. So Um, but before that, Sherlock, he just he just he knew he was felt guilty because um when he was still in London working with the Yard, um he exposed Lestrade to a lot of the public side of fame, and it became like an addiction to him. And as someone who's been an addict, it really like tore at his heart because he saw what it's done to him. It pretty much destroyed Lestrade's career. Not just not just this case where he couldn't do anything because the father basically was coming down on him, making it impossible for him to make a case against the son who killed his wife, who ended up actually killing his wife. So what happens is, between the case and the personal side of this, I'm gonna work on the case real quick before I go back to the personal side, because there's a lot of stuff about that happening. For the case, okay, so Sherlock devised a plan with Watson to go meet the son in his house to look for clues, because he had Watson and Lestrade meet. They went to this old abandoned theater, and that's where Lestrade was hiding out. So, and there's this weird moment where, so he introduced the two of them, and Holmes is like, he's focused on the case, and Lestrade's like, you need to step back because he's doing that thing. She's like, I know what he's doing. I've seen him do that thing. like they just didn't. He didn't know what her relationship with Sherlock was, and then Sherlock finds this discrepancy in some of the photographs from the case. There's this wall of masks, like old clay masks, and they're lined up, but on one shot before, the one that the wife had took and sent to a friend a few hours prior to her death, they were lined perfectly. But when it got to the other photo, one was out of alignment, like it was brought further down, and Holmes thought that was really weird. So he decided to he needed to investigate. So he went to the guy's house with Watson, and he lied and told him that Watson was the #1 Homeland Security officer in the world or whatever. And so Watson looked at him. You know how whenever he says something that she's not, she's like, where are you going with this? Where are you going with this, Holmes? And so but she went along with it, and he showed her around the house, showed her all the different security points. There were like a lot of cameras and stuff, and that's when Sherlock used the time to pull back that one mask that's messed up, and he found a nail under there and looked like it had black crust or something on it, and it was probably blood or something, because it was what ends up happening is the man got a plastic gun made, which is illegal. You can't actually get them made, but you can make one yourself if you get a 3D printer and all the other components, which you can actually get from around the house mostly, except you need to get for the trigger or something, like, I think like the trigger, you need like a nail or something to hold into place so you can shoot them. And so Sherlock, he found that, but he knew he couldn't hold that on him because he didn't know where the rest of the gun was. And when him and Lestrade and Watson were talking in the theater, he's saying he didn't see no gun or whatever. He's like, 'cause it's not a gun you're looking for a plastic one that was broken down. What happens is there's this bottle of, they thought was milk, because the wife is a vegetarian and she's lactose intolerant. So they're trying to figure out, what happened to the gun. And then there's this bottle of milk in the refrigerator, something that looks like milk. What happened is it's acetylene in the gun that was broken down by the acetylene he dropped. When he took apart the gun, he put them in the bottle of, like, you know, those old little milk bottles, and it broke down into this white stuff that made it look like milk, but it really was just the gun. But it wasn't there anymore or something. And so Sherlock had to find a different way to pin the murder on the guy. So they went to find who bought the 3D printer, because it wasn't Lawrence, it was someone else. It was this guy named Nicky Ginn. Nicky Ginn was someone that Lawrence paid to get the 3D printer so that he could make the gun. But so they went to go pay Lawrence a visit, and while they were doing that, before they did that, Holmes was trying to make amends with Lestrade and get him and to, like, apologize for what he did to him, and ultimately tell him that he didn't want him to be taking his evidence and using it as a way of him flourishing in his career. He just wanted him to admit that Sherlock played a part in it, but he didn't in the end. But before that, they found the list because they got the list from this guy through the CCTV, like Watson and Holmes. They were in, I can't not remember what part of London they were in, but it's like a very crowded place. He had this bag of big white posters, and he had written down, "Hi, my name is Sherlock Holmes." I think he had I forgot the name of the guy, but there's a guy that he knew who doesn't have a number. And so he wrote down a message for him to send him all names of people who bought 3D printers. And so that's how he got the list, and that's what they were looking at when Sherlock was talking to Lestrade about that. And then they ended up they had to find another way to pin him on it. So when they went in to find Nicky, they went to Nicky's house and found him dead. Like, he was stabbed, but he was stabbed by the left hand, not the right hand. The right hand is the right hand is the hand that was it left? God. Okay, if it's not the right one, it's the opposite. Whichever. So he ended up stabbing with I'm gonna say it's the left. I'm gonna say it's the left hand that he ended up stabbing him with the knife from the guys. But it didn't seem like the Sherlock, so he started sniffing around looking for stuff, and he found an apple that had a nail in it, which really was weird. What ends up happening is that the gun, he made another gun to shoot Nicky with, right? And the gun exploded because he used the wrong kind of rounds. He used this round kind of long, I forgot, it was long something, but it wasn't the same one that he used to kill his wife with. It was a different one, so the gun exploded in his hand and pretty much, like, messed up the hand. So when Sherlock and them went to go collect the man from his house, because they brought the police, he said there would be like an injury to your forearm. I think it was the left forearm, or it was the right, because I just said I really can't figure, I can't remember which one it was. But Sherlock, he says, so we have a warrant to see if if you are injured right there, and if you are, we're taking you in for the murder of Nicky Ginn and your wife. And so ends up Lestrade, he, from the very end, he gets reinstated to the yard, and he publicly shares some of the details of how he found out that the man killed his wife. Okay, now, and Sherlock he's like, I've never had this many mix of emotions before. This combination of everything was like anger, exasperation, and what's that, worry? Yeah, worrying for addicts. It's an interesting thing, which is true. Okay, now I'm gonna finish this off with the personal side. So, this is a lot about Mycroft and Sherlock, because I actually really like the way CBS played the Holmes brothers relationship, because it's very different, but it's very, kind of true to the old Holmes um, stories. First of all, when he when he first saw him, he called him Fatty. He kept calling him Fatty, and then so he there's a lot of things about Mycroft that come out into the air throughout this episode. For one, he asked Watson out to dinner to one of his restaurants, and Sherlock thinks that's because he wants to better have sex with her. In other words, which made me laugh so much. He's like, since you can't have me, you can have a cheaper version of me. I was like, you have to stop it, Sherlock. She doesn't want you like that. And so Holmes, he's like, cause they were in the middle of investigating, and he's like, no, you go ahead, go to the date, just you can prove that I'm right, that Mycroft wants to get back at me for sleeping with his, I want to say it was his fiance, because 5 years ago Mycroft was engaged to be married to this woman, and Sherlock ended up seducing her like 7 times just to prove that she was interested in the family fortune and not in Mycroft at all, which is really sad, because Mycroft, he's kind of an amusing character, and it turns out he's like this owner of all these different restaurants around London. Instead of the hiring the British government, they decided to make him a very big chain restaurant owner. So Mycroft was like, and so when they went to dinner, because Watson won, of course, she's like, this isn't a romantic. This ain't nothing gonna happen here, right? It's like, you think this is a romantic outing or whatever. She's like, isn't it? She's trying to make sure, and he's like, sit down, Miss Watson. And so he talked to her. First, because early in the episode, he said that Sherlock Holmes didn't have any friends, but Watson told him she was his friend or whatever. And so what happens is we find out that because Mycroft isn't fat, he's slim, right? And so that's why the joke was kind of funny whenever you kept calling him Fatty. And what happens is what happened was that Mycroft got really sick, and Watson noticed it because early in the episode they panned to his arm when he was on the phone when Watson had woke up and he was cutting vegetables and stuff, and he had this, like, you can tell it was like a graft or something that happened to his arm. He had a bone marrow transplant, it turned out. And of course Watson could tell because she's a former surgeon, she knows all that stuff. And so he was like, you were very sick, weren't you? And so he explained about how he when he wasn't vomiting, he was trying to figure out how to reevaluate his relationship with his brother, and because he felt bad for not reaching out to Sherlock when he could have and asked him for some bone marrow, because he was ill, and that's how he lost all that weight. Ooh, oh, sorry. And so Sherlock, so that was the thing. He asked her. That was the last part of the dinner scene. Was how does one go about being Sherlock Holmes' friend? He wanted to know, and it made me cry, because like you can tell how strained their relationship is. They're always arguing. There's always butting heads. But that's not what Mycroft wanted. He wanted to actually get to know his brother and be in his life. But like when they came face to face with each other, basically he just went back to his old habits of being the older brother and picking on Sherlock. That was another thing. when Sherlock couldn't find his things in 221B, he got upset. He's like, "Where are my things?" And Mycroft said he sold them to charity shops, but we found out later when um, Mycroft, he texts Sherlock when he's about to go get on the train to go to the airport to go back to America, and he meets Mycroft one last time, and Mycroft tells him, I never sold your stuff to charity shop. It's in that, it's in that, it's in that door behind there," because they were like sitting on a bench behind this gated place, and so Mycroft was like, Miss Watson said in order to get your attention, you have to take interest in something that you do or something like that. And so he pulled out this device, like a detonator, and all this stuff. Sherlock had a long set of books that were like focused solely on homemade bomb making. He's like, "Do you know how much trouble you can get in if someone came snooping around your stuff?" And then he had to spit that line about Miss Watson had told him about Sherlock, and then he just detonated it, and obviously all of the pages fly out and everything. And then he handed it to Sherlock, and he's like, "Where are you now?" I was like, "Oh, that's funny." And then he went back, and then Sherlock he looked at Mycroft, and Mycroft had just handed it to him and left him there, and then he just went back to Watson, and they got on the train and went home, which I thought was nice. I wish they had spent more time in London, though, to be honest. Because that would have been interesting to see all the dynamics. Or they should bring over Ellen Gregson and Detective Bell and see how that all works out. Like, that would be interesting, don't you think? But it was a pretty good episode. I liked it. I laughed a lot, which, I do that a bit during elementary. And there were a lot of sweet moments, so I can't wait for next week. And I hope you guys enjoyed this little review, and if you have anything you'd like to me about, down here in the comments, please. I'll see you next week. Bye.